Amidst a global economy facing numerous uncertainties, China, the world's factory, is witnessing some grim realities where the struggle to make a living has turned into a fierce battle. Stories circulating on social media are not just isolated fragments, but collectively paint a comprehensive picture of a paradoxical prosperity under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. These are haunting images of desperation, depicting people pushed to the very limits of their endurance. The beginning of this tragic series is the image of a 37-year-old single mother in Hunan who set aside all pride to openly offer herself for sale. "I have no other choice," she said in the video, her eyes vacant and marked by despair as her young child needed food and medicine, with no shoulder to lean on. In modern society, prostitution remains a highly controversial topic. People often view sex workers through a lens of prejudice, associating them with sin and moral downfall, forgetting that behind each face lies a story filled with hardship. Many women enter this path not out of material desire, but because of extreme poverty, debt, or even deception and coercion. Some are single mothers struggling to raise their children amid scarcity. Others are just in their 20s, having left their rural hometowns to the city with hopes of better life, only to fall into traps. That work takes from them not only their health and youth, but also their dignity in the eyes of society. They have to live in the shadows, hiding their identity, constantly carrying the fear of being discovered and despised. Nevertheless, it cannot be denied that prostitution exists as a gray area of life, where supply and demand continue quietly despite the law. The issue is not about condemnation or legalization, but about recognizing the people behind it, the individuals trapped in a dead end. As long as society remains unequal and opportunities to make a living are not fairly distributed, prostitution will continue to exist as a consequence. Only when we dare to see them through compassionate eyes, acknowledging them as human beings with pain and aspirations, can we truly find a solution to this problem. The burden of making a living has pushed them to the brink. This is not just an individual story, but also a wake-up call about the social reality in China, where many lives are struggling in poverty. In a small alley in Hunan alone, the sight of women standing timidly by the roadside, their eyes desperately searching for a customer, has become a familiar scene. Rising unemployment and an economic downturn have made this sensitive industry fiercely competitive, driving the price of services down to about $10.50. Extreme desperation has forced them to do whatever it takes to survive, even openly advertising themselves on social media, despite knowing that these platforms are ready to remove any sensitive content. China's economy is going through an unprecedented period of difficulty. Workers across all industries are facing layoffs, pay cuts, and intense competition. Many people are struggling day by day to make a living, and heartbreaking images of their plight are becoming increasingly common. In June, a young woman in Hanam, despite being neatly dressed, was seen bending down to pick food out of a trash bin. Her desperate eyes and humiliating actions spoke volumes about extreme hunger. Similarly, elderly people in Jiangsu and Shudong rummage daily, beside garbage bins, collecting leftover food to cook a meal. In Xi Jinping's era of prosperity, they long for a life with dignity, but all they can do is survive. Not only the extremely poor, but also the middle class, those who have poured all their money into buying a home in hopes of a stable life, are falling into dire straits. The pressure from massive mortgage payments is already suffocating, but the continuous decline in housing prices has frozen their assets, making them impossible to sell or forcing them to sell at a heavy loss. Images of delivery workers having to bring their young children along in freezing weather have deeply moved the online community. From Hubei to Chongqing and Changsha, tiny children are seen curled up inside cargo boxes, on their parents' motorbikes, or entrusted to strangers for a few brief minutes. Life is really tough, one person filming side. On a cold day like this, who would take their child outside unless they were forced to? Comments on social media have bluntly pointed out the core issue. Children left alone at home are nothing more than hostages, and workers are chained to hard labor like beasts of burden. Many have also concluded that this is precisely why today's young people are reluctant to get married or have children. The Chinese Communist Party will probably spin this into a story about positive energy, praising endurance, one bitter comment said. But glorifying suffering is just a sinister tactic used by exploiters. Under the bridge in Guangzhou, Instead of tourists or camping enthusiasts, there are rows of shabby tents serving as shelters for delivery drivers and migrant workers. They live there to save on rent and utility costs, despite knowing that life is extremely difficult. A video showing these shanty towns quickly went viral, drawing the attention of the Guangzhou authorities. By June 25th, the tents had disappeared, and the original video was deleted. The person who posted the video initially innocently said that the problem has been resolved and that the authorities have a good solution and will arrange for these individuals. But the harsh reality is much different. The so-called solution from the authorities was simply to drive the homeless people away elsewhere, treating the problem as if it were solved. They didn't actually help. They merely covered up the scars of society. The workers lost even their temporary shelter and may have to return to their hometowns, while industries like delivery services and ride-hailing, which have been the last refuge for many unemployed middle-aged people, are gradually becoming saturated. In Guangzhou, a distinguished alumnus of South China Normal University, who used to work as a front-end developer, was laid off at the age of 40 and has been unemployed for 2 months. Every day, he goes to the library pretending to be at work, so his family won't find out. He has sent out 458 job applications without receiving a single response. Companies reject him because he is over 35 years old or lacks experience. The burden of mortgage payments, his children's education expenses, and supporting his parents weigh heavily on his shoulders. He urgently appeals to society to pay more attention to unemployed middle-aged people and give us a chance. Advice from the online community: be honest with your family before you break down. A 31-year-old civil engineering master's graduate from Chongqing is currently unemployed and owes $30,000. He once took pride in working at Sunac, one of the leading real estate companies. But after less than 6 months on the job, the pandemic hit. By 2021, Sunak began facing difficulties, and his entire team was laid off. He started his own business and expanded too quickly, resulting in heavy losses, exhausting all his savings and accumulating massive debt. With just over a year of experience in the construction industry, he lacked a competitive edge and felt lost and stuck. A college student in Hannam recorded a video documenting their job search journey. They went through a series of interviews, but the offers they received were disheartening. Salaries under $440 per month, working more than 10 hours a day, no overtime pay, and no social insurance or housing fund benefits. In one case, a job at a pet store offered only a basic salary of about $145 for 10 hours of work each day, with just 3 days off per month. A human resources representative bluntly stated, "You're in Hannam. If you don't work in a factory, you won't find a job with benefits." This situation highlights the weaknesses in enforcing labor laws in China, where the regulations seem to apply mainly to foreign companies. Many young people who couldn't find jobs in big cities have returned to their hometowns, but life in smaller towns is just as challenging. In Tracchow, many families are struggling to get by day to day, often not even having $1,400 in their wallets. Half of the large and small businesses here are cutting wages and laying off workers. Those who want to start their own businesses immediately face a fierce price war. The story of the blogger Little Wong's friend in Zhuozhou, who once owned a successful chain of restaurants, drove a Mercedes and used a high-end phone, but within just 2 years, most of his restaurants had to close down. He had to sell his luxury car, suffered monthly losses, and now the only remaining restaurant is also operating at a loss. He plans to close it after the Lunar New Year to start delivering food while waiting for the market to recover. These stories reflect the devastating impact of the economic downturn and changes in customer spending on the restaurant industry. With an average monthly salary of only about $440 in Zhuozhou, many people are forced to rely on credit cards. The burden of mortgage payments, car loans, education expenses for their children, caring for elderly parents, along with other living costs, makes their income insufficient to cover everything. Life becomes an endless cycle between home and work, leaving no room for entertainment or social relationships. Having a stable job is considered a stroke of luck, so everyone is cautious, fearing that even a small mistake could lead to losing their job. Everyone is anxious and confused, pushing themselves to the point of exhaustion. A young food delivery worker gave an honest account of the working class life in China. For those at the bottom of society, it's all about survival, not living. He works 14 hours a day, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., but in reality, his shifts often stretch until nearly 10 p.m. Breakfast is rushed between orders, lunch comes at 3 p.m., and meals are eaten hastily to avoid disrupting the delivery schedule. The job not only drains physical strength, but also carries many risks. The pressure to meet delivery deadlines forces him to speed, run red lights, and drive against traffic. In just 2 weeks, he ran red lights 5 times, drove in the wrong lanes countless times, witnessed 4 motorcycle accidents, and even crashed into a fence on his very first day. Many drivers use their phones while driving to accept orders, adding to the danger. Besides these risks, long working hours and sitting in one position lead to chronic health problems, such as bone spurs, back pain, and arthritis. But the most unbearable thing wasn't physical exhaustion. It was a deep sense of despair. I feel like I can see the end of the road in life right from the starting line. A never-ending loop of repetitive tasks, with no change or growth, he said. The monotony crushes every dream and aspiration. But for many, there is no way out. The only option is to quit. Yet even then, they face the same harsh reality in other low-level jobs. This is not just a hardship of delivery workers, but shared experience of everyone at the bottom of society. The happiness index becomes absurd. Praising the struggles of the poor as inspirational stories is an insult. In this line of work, there is no life, only bare, cold existence. Under the rule of the Chinese Communist Party, individuals are bound and swept up by a massive, relentless machine that leaves no room for autonomy or choice. In the past, when the economy was booming, life was somewhat more bearable. However, in the current context and the near future, mere survival has become the primary goal for countless people at the bottom of society. For them, a better life has become an unattainable dream, overshadowed by the simple struggle to stay alive. This harsh reality highlights the systemic challenges faced by workers who have carried and continue to sustain society, yet are often neglected and lack the means to secure their own dignity and happiness.